Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to this session. For those who did not attend the previous session on Tuesday, my name is Mokhadi Matlakala, and I am Professor MC Matlakala from UNISA. So we will continue with our session for today, which builds up from what we did on Tuesday evening. I will quickly switch off my camera and start uploading the presentation. Right, I hope you are all able to see the presentation here. We are now on part 2 of our guided tour of your research proposal. And I hope today we will still be able to clarify your expectations of your proposal for your respective degrees, whether a master's or a doctoral proposal. The outcomes of today, we are just going to deal with two things. We will recap on what we said is a research proposal from yesterday, from the day before yesterday. And then we will go on to introduce the components of the research proposal, which I suppose is all what we would like to hear. And I would like to, at this stage, ask you to really think about your own proposal. If you have it in front of you, as we go down with the slides and the presentation, just reflect on your own proposal. So we did the definitional issues the other day, and we got to describe a proposal as a systematically formatted and detailed statement of the intent of you as the researcher, which justifies a plan of action and shows the investigation plan. Remember when we were defining or explaining what a proposal is or what research is, there are those words that came out now and then, and that was the systematic and investigation. And this confirms that your research or your research proposal is going to present a systematic investigation plan of your study. So just briefly, colleagues, why do we need a research proposal? It's always important that we have an idea why do we really have to do a research proposal? Because it's going to provide us with more information on your content and the methodology. So it shows the feasibility of the study, and on the other hand, it actually gives us the modus operandi, the methodology that you're going to use. So with the feasibility, remember we did the research problem, which we will still go through again today. The research problem is what really brings something that will show that this is a researchable problem, the feasibility of the study. And the modus operandi obviously will be all the methodological steps that you will take to address the problem you have identified. So we get this to do this research proposal so that we can deal with those. And again, it sets out the central issues or the questions that you intend to address. Remember, in your proposal or in your research study, you may be having those questions that you would like to address, or you may be having those issues that you feel they need further investigation so that we can confirm whether they do okay or not. And of course, it outlines the area of the study. The research proposal gives a picture of how far will you go with your study. And then it's going to also demonstrate the originality of your proposed research. So the research proposal, as you plan and you explain that this is what I will be doing to address this problem, it shows that this is the very first time that you will be investigating this problem. this is the first time that you will be looking into the problem, trying to find solutions. And very important for you as students, for us as academics, it helps us to match your research interest with an appropriate supervisor. So remember, you don't just get to get a supervisor. It must be somebody who is a specialist or who is aligned to your topic and the focus of the study so that they can be able to take you through your study. Right, the components of the research proposal. This is not a cast in stone. It will depend on how in your college or in your department you are being guided or how your supervisor would like you to outline, but the principles are the same. So in your document, obviously, you will have a title page that's going to give in the personal information. You will have to formulate a problem, review the literature, formulate the research objectives and questions or hypotheses, select the research design, explain the context of the research or what we normally call the setting, define the population, collect and analyze the data, give us the ethical issues that may be applicable in your study, and then also identify the scope and the limitation of your study. So we will go through all this one at a time and then see if we can gather enough information, and then you can actually just compare with your own proposal that you are having. There might be additions that you will have over and above what I will be presenting, or you may actually get additions from the presentation itself. So reflect on your own proposal as we go. It helps. Now, in your title page, you will need the personal information that will be yours as the researcher, your highest academic and professional qualification, the title of the proposed study, your personal particulars, the type of the study, if you've got funding, the name of the funder, your personal particulars of the project collaborators, if there are any collaborators, your supervisor as well. It's important because this is a proposal. You need to give information about yourself so that it can be seen to be aligned with what you are investigating. So you will note that at one stage you will be requested to append your CV. It's not just to check you or your background, but also to make sure that you are aligned to what you are investigating. For instance, if you are a nurse and your CV comes out as a CV of a nurse, and suddenly we find you want to go and investigate things about the police, then it's more like how did you get to go into the police to now get this problem? Well, we can see the problems out there, but do you have access that you can go and really work with the police on your topic? So your professional background as well will count on all this personal information that we see. So it's important, and of course we still respect the protection of personal information when you are requested to give all your information on the proposal. And your proposal will start with an abstract. And on your abstract, that will go through with your topic. So the wording should be aligned to your discipline, the wording of your abstract. And the abstract could just be very, very brief, more like 200 words or 150, because you are just giving a brief of what will be there in the proposal. And that could just be the purpose of the study, the setting, the population, the data collection, and data analysis, and your proposed contribution. And of course, you will then put in the keywords or the concepts which will guide on the search of your topic. Starting with the introduction and background. This is just emphasis of what we have done on Tuesday. So when you start with your proposal, make sure that you give in the introduction that is good enough to can give the reader a background of what you are going to do. And the introduction, of course, should introduce the topic itself. So you need to get as much literature about your topic so that you can be able to introduce this very topic. And as one is reading, then they will be able to understand that, oh, this is the information that is related to the topic that should be investigated. Not that you should write a lot of history. For instance, if you are doing a study on HIV and AIDS, it's not always mandatory that you start by saying HIV and AIDS was discovered in 1902. Your topic will guide the introduction of HIV and AIDS, because the focus of your study may not be related to the history itself. And of course, when you come in with the background, then with the background, you give a little bit of what is happening out there. Showcase what you have seen in relation to your topic. Is there a problem? And if there is a problem, where is this problem in the area where the problem is? If you want to research about psychosocial problems in South Africa, look at exactly where do you want to go and look at these psychosocial problems. Give us an overall of psychosocial problems, the way they happen, and then it will help you now to filter into your problem statement. Is there any research that was done? Put it out there. Are there any statistics that can support what you want to discover about the psychosocial problems? So you also give in an international scope of the problem. Is this psychosocial problem happening anywhere else in the world or globally? What is the intensity of this problem there? Who are affected? The population that is affected. Has there any research that has been done that relates to your topic? And the other day, there was a colleague who asked, can I also include information that is not related to psychology? Yes, you can get the information so that you can put your problem into perspective. You can indicate how intense this problem is, even if it's not only in psychology, but elsewhere, it may be a similar problem, but in another form. And who state the consequences of the problem? What does it do when you read globally, locally, and in your own context where you want to do the research? What do you see? Is it very important that you address this problem? And then describe now what you see in your context, in the area where you are. What did you discover? All this will then make sure that you are going to bring in an argument. Remember the argument in your problem statement. So you describe the state of knowledge about the subject or the phenomenon under study. And you end off by stating the gap. What have you observed after reading international literature, after reading the intensity of the problem globally? What do you see in relation to the problem that you have identified? And when you gather that information, all of it now, it helps you to present your problem. Then this is where you come in with the description of your own study problem. So your problem should flow logically from the introduction and the background. So the reader has already understood that, oh, this person is now going to talk about teenage pregnancy. And then they have indicated teenage pregnancy globally, teenage pregnancy in South Africa, teenage pregnancy in Johannesburg, teenage pregnancy during COVID-19. And, you know, when you come down now to the study problem, you start telling us what is the real problem. Already the reader wants to understand. This person is busy telling us about pregnancy, but what is this problem that they are experiencing? We have already heard that globally there were so many pregnancies during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the reasons were because everybody was just at home, not doing anything. And every time the little ones had to get a chance, this is what they would go to do. So now you set the different points and the views and assumptions in an unbiased way. You get the facts. Remember, we said when you design your problem statement, you must have facts, you must have evidence, you must have the voice of authority. So it must be congruent with the title as well as the purpose of the study. So as you come in with your problem, now you are actually telling the reader, this is what is happening here. In this specific area where you will be doing the study, you notice that this is what is happening. Remember the what exists that we spoke about on Tuesday. And then what is the gap? So, you know, you should contain what is already written or what has been studied. The scientific significance that will lead to the knowledge recreation. So you logically build up towards the research questions and the research goals. So your problem itself. And remember, this is what makes or breaks your study, the problem statement. You have to be sure that the gap that you have identified is a researchable problem. Take, for instance, you want to research about students who fail their master's degree at UNISA. And when you read back, because you must have a basis for saying this is a problem, you find that these are students who only came from matric. They don't even have a basic degree. Can you see that that is not a researchable problem? Already these people who are doing the masters are not even eligible to do the masters. So there is no need for you to even go and investigate them. This is a problem that should be solved by UNISA, not by a scientific inquiry. But you can have a problem that says master students at UNISA are failing. They do not complete on time. What is the problem? And then the problem comes, it's like the students are not attending the workshops. So they never get to get information. Even when the workshops are organized, the students are not there. Then we need to investigate, why are the students not attending the workshops? So you see how you bring in your problem. And then you need to have the rationale for the study, which is clearly highlights the contribution both to literature and practice. So if you listen to what I'm saying now, you can hear that after this, the contribution will be to the UNISA academics to say, now that we see the students are not attending and they are saying their reasons are 1, 2, 3. It's because they are working, they don't have time. So how best can we deal with this? We meet them halfway so they can be able to attend their workshops. So this is how you build on on your problem statement. You quote the research that has been done, if there has been, and then you provide sufficient motivation for doing the research. Then you explain how you as the researcher experienced or encountered the gap. How did you get to go into this problem? And now you go on to formulate a theoretical or a conceptual framework. Choose a framework that fits or that is relevant to the study question. And then you can integrate or apply the theories and the concepts clearly to the phenomenon under study. So if it means the whole thing about not finishing the master's degree on time, it's because of the problems with the studies. Go and look for a theoretical framework that talks about how to improve the studies or how to deal with the challenges of not completing studies. You know, then you can use that kind of a framework to support your study. I'm not going to go in deeply into the theoretical frameworks because you will still get another session where you will get to hear more about the theoretical and conceptual frameworks. So we will just concentrate on the proposal itself. Then you have your definition of key concepts. So you define the central key concepts of the research topic. You know, you can use maybe 3, 4 of those, or 4 to 6. They will actually assist you to be able to search the literature. So you use them and then you apply them within the context of your research study. So that when you say your topic is about attending student development programs, one of your keywords would definitely be student, because that's what you want to search. The other one will be a development program, because that's what you want to hear about, so that you can be able to build on your own study. So the aim of the study, we spoke about the aim of the study the other day, so it follows now. This we normally call the research goal, or sometimes it's called the purpose of the study. And this is a statement of the researcher's intention, which gives an indication of what you want to do or what you want to achieve in the research. So you will define this one in your own words. For instance, if it's the hypothetical example that I'm giving of students who do not complete their master's programs on time, and then you have identified the problem, that the problem now is that the students do not get enough time to attend the workshops because they are working and all. So what do you want to do in this study? What is your aim in relation to the fact that the students are not able to attend the workshops? What do you want to do in relation to the fact that the students are not completing on time? So you bring in the aim of the study now, which will give the reader information of how to respond to that problem. And this leads to your objectives, the questions and the hypothesis. Remember, we spoke about them, the research objectives and the research questions, the same way that we explained the other day, that this now you formulate them in such a way that they will give you enough information that will assist you to respond or to achieve the aim of your study. And the aim of your study will be that which will help you to respond to the problem. And once you have responded to your problem now, your study has been achieved. So with your research objectives, you provide clear statements of intended outcomes, which can be measured in some way. So you describe concisely what the research project is trying to achieve, and you use action verbs such as to determine, establish, develop, explore, define, describe. You can actually check in your own proposal how you have designed them. But each choice of the action word used in the objectives should be specific enough to facilitate a measurable outcome. And that is why we say the objectives should be designed in such a way that they will facilitate the collection of evidence that is enough to respond to the aim of the study. And the aim of the study will then solve the problem. Not really solve, but respond to the problem you have identified. And with the research questions, we had said these are the objectives turned into questions. So when you develop your research proposal, make sure that immediately after the aim of the study, you follow through with the research objectives, because they will give that information that responds to the aim. And then if you've got questions, immediately turn those questions into objectives so that we can see how they flow. We spoke about scientific rigor. And if you have a hypothesis, you state the hypothesis as well. In my study that I'm doing about the master students who do not complete on time, the hypothesis could be For example, students at UNISA, master students would complete on time if they are given enough of the research workshops. Or attending research workshops will lead to a quick progression in the studies. That could be, you can formulate it like that. It's a pity my study is not really focused. I'm just giving examples. Yes, and the research paradigm. So you describe and discuss the applicable paradigm for your study. And we've got 3 epistemological constructs that can assist you as you choose your paradigm. So and many others. But you've got objectivism, where the objectivist believes that meaningful reality exists out there. Just human beings need to discover it. So they accept that meaning is already inherent within an object being examined, and the properties of that object can be measured and quantified. So you need to go back and read about this so that you can understand better in relation to your study. Where the objectivist says meaningful reality exists out there, you as a human being, you need to discover it. What does that say in your own study? Subjectivism, this epistemology purports that meaning emerges not from the interplay between subject and objects, but is imposed on the object by the subject. In relation to your own study, look at all this. Is it applicable? And if it's applicable, what then is the object in your study and what is the subject in your study? That is very important, because in your proposal, you are not just going to be mentioning object and subject. You have already identified those, so you name them. If you know the phenomenon, you no longer call it a phenomenon, you name it by its name. Constructionism, reality is socially constructed by people, so you actually need to go and look in your own study. What is this reality that is constructed by people? And of course, we've got positivism, constructivism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. And I implore you to go and read all those so that you can see how best they align in your study. And we have the study approach and design. In this section now, you define and emphasize the application of the research approach. So you choose that one which is suitable for the proposed study. If it's my study that I'm going to be doing, it will depend what is it I want to do. Do I just want to get the views, or do I want to measure some kind of information in relation to this phenomenon of mine where students do not complete their masters on time? So I will actually just look at which one is the approach that is feasible for the study. And then I can now choose whether it's a quantitative or qualitative, or whether I would like to use both of the approaches. So you can also read again about the approaches and understand. As of now, if you think about your own study, ask yourself, how did I come to choose this approach that I have in my study, and how applicable is it to the study itself? So state the benefits of using the specific research approach. That's going to answer your question. It will tell you, why did you choose this approach? Discuss the characteristics of the research approach. If you chose a qualitative, give the characteristics of qualitative, but in the context of your study. Remember, in the book, they will say a qualitative study is one where you do interviews and what. Because here you must do an application. You will indicate that in the context of this study, the interviews will be done, and then because they will be 1, 2, 3. So you actually support your statements so that we can see that whatever it is you chose, it's applicable to the focus of your study, to the phenomenon that you are going to be studying. So you define, describe, and apply the research design as well, its facets, and use this in your research. So these are the different study approaches and designs. You've got the qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, as I just indicated. But then you also need to have the study setting. This is very important. The study setting. And the study setting will also relate to where you identified the problem. Say, for instance, we are talking about the UNISA students who are not completing their masters on time. So you cannot, the problem you see is at UNISA. So you can't say, now I'm going to do the study at WITS. You haven't seen that the students at WITS are not completing on time. So your setting should be relevant to the focus of your study. So as you explain it in your own proposal, check whether it is relevant. The setting should actually be where you saw the problem, and because then your recommendations are going to be in that very setting. So the population, the entire or sum total of the cases in which the researcher is interested. So these are the people that you will be using in your study. You need to explain who your population is. If you think that the people that will be relevant for giving information about the inability to complete the masters on time will be the students, that will be your population. And if you feel the people who will be able to give enough information about the academic research workshops will be the academic staff, then those will be your second population as well, because you will need information from both sets that will be complemented for you to be able to solve the problem that you have identified. So there is no harm in having two populations. Then your target population there, that is what we're talking about, the cases about which the researcher intends to generalize the findings. And then you've got to look at your sample. Out of all these people, let's say your population will be all masters and doctorals, all master students at UNISA. That is your general population. Your accessible population, it would be those students that have been registered. And your target population will be all the students who have been invited to come and to the workshops. Because there's no use if you have to go and say, I will investigate from students, and then you get the students say, but we don't even know whether they are workshops or not. So those that do not complete, even if there are supplementary activities that will assist them to complete, but they are not taking them up. So you go on to look at a sample. Out of all these people, who of the sample, what is going to be your sample? Who are the specifics that you want to choose that will be included in your study? That will be your sample, and then you can now do the sampling frame, which is the source material from which the sample is drawn. And then you have the selection criteria that is going to give you a impact of why do you include these specific people and not the other people. So you define your criteria. You have to provide that criteria, and this sometimes is so confusing to write. You need to read and understand what inclusion and exclusion means. So here, if your population is the master students and you got your target population to be those students that have been invited to go to the workshops, then you must work within those. And then your exclusion should be should actually come out of the very same. So you can't say the exclusion criteria will be PhD students. Your target population from the beginning was never PhD students. So you can't say you exclude them. They were already excluded by the fact that your population from the beginning was the master students only. So you need to really read and understand what exclusion inclusion means so that you can be able to give good information about how you decided to include and exclude the others. Let me give you another example here, like on the inclusion and exclusion. Say you are doing a study on the use of makeup by females. You just said females. You never said white, black, or what. So in your exclusion criteria, you can never say, I'm going to exclude albinos. Because you just said females. Those people who are albinos are also females. And if they are putting makeup, why do you want to exclude them? So you need to have definite, definitions of the people that you want in your study so that in the long run, you don't get caught in matters of ethics where you are excluding others by bias or, by discrimination and so forth. I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. So you indicate the use of gatekeepers if applicable to select your participant so you can get the sample. And now the data collection method and procedures. You describe the methods that you are going to collect data. Remember, this will come from your research approach. You have already indicated that you want to do a qualitative or quantitative. That guides you on the procedures for collecting data. If it's a mixed method, obviously, you will also be able to identify those methods that will talk to the mixed approach. So you identify those, you explain the methods, the instruments that you're going to use, the tests and the scales that you will be applying there. And then you explain the appropriateness of this to your research question. If you are going to use a self-designed questionnaire, is it appropriate to the question that you will be asking? If you are going to use a borrowed questionnaire, is that appropriate to the problem that you have identified? And then you discuss the validity, the reliability of the instruments and the procedures that you will be using, as well as the statistical methods, depending on whether you are quantitative, qualitative, or mixed. And then you apply known techniques accepted as valid before embarking on untried methods of analysis. Sometimes we design our own analysis. There are so many methods that are coming through now and then. Already we know that there is something like I will collect data from a WhatsApp group. Has it been tried? Has it been tested? How do we get to deal with matters of exclusion, inclusion, privacy, and so forth? So you look at those and then you really talk to them. Think about your own study right now, your technique that you have chosen. Reflect on it. Outline the plans for contingencies. Then the data analysis methods again. This will also go along with the chosen approach. If it's quantitative, qualitative, you will also indicate the softwares that you are going to be using, the types of statistics that you will be using as well. Ensuring rigor. We talked about rigor. Discuss the data verification method that will be employed to verify the data collected for the research study and how such methods will be implemented. So you need to note the different standards of rigor between the qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method researchers. How do you develop a golden thread from the problem to the objectives to the population you selected to how you are collecting the data, and finally how you are going to analyze the data such that it will give verifiable information which is new, scientific, and done systematically. Your ethical considerations. You identify and define ethical considerations that apply to your study, and it will depend on what kind of population do you have. Do you have population as humans? Do you have populations as objects or animals? So the ethical considerations will be aligned to such. explain how you will apply them in your research. And of course, very important, as per UNISA policy, your professional body, if you are in the discipline where there are professional bodies. The lawyers have got their own law professional bodies, scientists have got their own things, teachers have got their own, and the nurses and psychologists, social workers. So your professional body, you need to look at all those ethical considerations, but more importantly, according to the UNISA policy. Remember, you get this qualification, you will be talking, I got my master's at UNISA. Do you understand the ethical the research policy of UNISA that you followed when you were doing your master's or your PhD? Sorry that I keep on referring to the master's, but of course the PhD as well. Name and comment on possible risks related to ethical issues. And you should should the study involve the humans, state the arrangements for debriefing and with whom if necessary, depending on the risk level of your study. So I will now just now briefly go through the risks. So the risk assessment and the categories for your study, you need to outline the personal and social information that will be collected from the participants, the cultural and historical information. If you are going to be doing physical examinations or any interventions on your participants, are they going to be doing some kinds of testing such as the psychometric testing? Will there be any identifiable information such as from the records, if at all you're going to be using medical records, police records, the lawyer's records? Yes, the social workers' records. Yeah. The students' records if you're using students. So it will depend on the focus of your study. And then consulting with experts, are you going to be doing that? If there are such, you need to name them. So here are the different risks levels that can happen in your study. So they have been categorized into 4. The first category, category 1, is a negligible risk. And this is where you've got no or very minimal direct to human participant involvement. And in your, let's say, for instance, you are not, you are just using the records, not the owners of the records as people. That will be a rather negligible risk. Although there should be a certain level where you say it's a negligible, especially because in the records you need to respect the popia. Category 2, you've got low risk, where there is direct human participant involvement and the only foreseeable risk of harm may be a potential for minor discomfort or inconvenience. That's the research that would not pose a risk above the everyday norm. Let's say you are just interviewing people about why did they not complete on time, and they just feel uncomfortable to say it's because I'm struggling to balance my work life, home life, and study life. You know, that's a very low risk. It wouldn't do any harm. It's only that they really may feel inconvenience of telling you what is happening to them at the time. And category 3, which is a medium risk, that is direct human participant involvement, where the research poses a risk above everyday norm. That will be including physical, psychological, and social risks. So here you need to get the steps that should be taken to minimize the likelihood of the event occurring. So if you feel people are going to be weeping, crying, you rise their emotions to a specific level where they will really feel psychologically affected, then you need to find ways in which you will minimize such, because you already anticipate they will happen. Explain it in your study. Category 4, which is a high risk, that's direct human participant involvement, And this is where there is a real foreseeable risk of harm, including physical, social, and psychological risk that lead to serious adverse events. Are you going to be giving some kinds of interventions where people will now either get physically injured or whatever the intervention that we will be doing on the participants? So reflect on your own study. Where do you think you categorize your own in your proposal that you have now? So you still need to describe the steps to be undertaken in case of those adverse events if you anticipate them. And then, of course, very important is that you need to indicate the age range of the potential participants so that we can be able to deal with issues of consent and assent. Who should give the consent if the participants are below age of 18? They should get, who should give a assent? And then you also describe the process of obtaining informed consent. How are you going to be collecting the data, the informed consent? Do you call them over the phone and say, do you consent? Or do you give them a written paper that they must go and sign? And how are you going to be explaining all the steps that they will give them more information about the study to convince them that, yes, I am eligible to be part of this study? And of course, when we give when we ask for informed consent, there is this thing that as a student you always say, I would like to do this study so that I can get my degree. So think about that. Is that not a risk? The participant may just feel like, oh, so I'm going to be used so somebody can get a master's. So you reflect on them and make sure that when you put them forth, when you ask for, when you give a request informed consent, you give the real information about the study. Of course, it's important that you also indicate to the student, to the participant, that I am a student and I'm registered for this degree. But as a requirement, this is what I do. This is what I need to do. But I have already also observed that there is this problem that is happening. And once you participate in this study, this will be the benefits for you over and above me getting the degree. So you should actually put it in such a way that it doesn't become one-sided. So you indicate the amounts of compensation, if there will be any, if there are any reimbursements, the gifts or services to be provided to the participants. And of course, you cannot just write that we will give them tea. That is not a fair enough thing to our participants, because they are not objects that should be used for the research. And these are small things that will make your proposal go back and forth to your supervisor, because they will keep on saying, please give the correct information here. Apply your information. So an arrangement for indemnity, if there's any. So you also talk about the demarcation of the study. So we will hear from the proposal, the scope of the study, how big is the study going to be, and the limitations that may be there in your study. And of course, we will need to see the list of references. We kept on saying refer to literature, refer to literature. And your proposal must have supporting documents, such as a declaration, a statement that you are agreeing that you will comply with the ethical principles as set out in the UNISA research policy. And you must have your project timelines. It's important to have this because they guide you and they give you a little push that you must really have progress with your study. So you design the timelines for yourself. Make sure that you know that you should complete the proposal module within a year. And of course, there should be those such as the required letters and the the consent form, as we spoke about. Yes, and colleagues, I think this brings us to the end of the presentation about the research proposal. I want to end this show and thank you for listening. I will open up for questions or for additions, then we can engage. I'm going to give you a little bit of time so that you can post your questions or anything where you need issues of clarity. It's 5 minutes to 7. We've got a little bit of time that we can still talk about the proposal. Yes, thank you, Paul. Is exclusions doing inclusion similar or the same limitations? Okay, let me try to explain again the inclusion and exclusion criteria for your study. Paul, I'm not sure if I'm getting the question right, but the inclusion criteria are those characteristics that makes your sample eligible to be in your study. And the exclusion criteria are those characteristics that will make the people that you thought are going to be in your study not to be eligible to be part of your study. For instance, I said in my hypothetical study, if you say your population is going to be students who are registered for masters, and then you say your sample will be all students who have now taken more than 3 years in the master's program and they are not completing. But because the problem is students who do not attend the workshops. So your inclusion will be all those students who were invited to come to the workshop and they did not attend. And your exclusion out of the very same group will be those that who were never invited, because these ones we don't know whether they have a problem. We cannot ask them because they were never even invited to come to the workshop themselves. I hope it makes a little bit of sense, Paul. Thank you. And Anonymous, what is the minimum and maximum number of pages of a master's proposal? Yes, this question is coming again, and we had said 12 to 15 pages. That will depend on the guidance from your supervisor or the guidance from your research ethics committee or the department where you are, or even the college itself. So there are specifics, but remember your research proposal should not be too long to cover everything. You are giving a brief of what your study will entail. Anonymous, what are the ideal number of participants in an honors degree? Would it depend on the number of questions asked? Anonymous, the number of participants in a study will depend on the focus of the study, and they will also depend on the population. Most importantly, it depends on the phenomenon under study. So your study approach and the data collection method will guide you on the number of participants that we require, such that for a qualitative study, you may have this number of people. If you have a bigger population for a qualitative study and you feel this is a similar population that you can do a focus group discussions, then you can have many of the participants, but use a specific method to put them together so that you can gather enough information from all of them. If you have a smaller population, obviously you may choose to do one-on-one interviews. If you are following a quite quantitative study and you have the population as only 20, obviously because you want enough information, you will take all the 20. But somewhere you may have a population of 5,000 people, and that will mean you have to delimit the number according to the phenomenon you are inquiring. So the number of questions does not really give an indication of how many participants. 20 participants can answer 100 questions depending on what is it that you are asking, as long as they are the relevant cohort of people that will give the correct information for what you are investigating. Yes, thank you. Anonymous again. Thank you, Prof. When doing historical development of the topic, are you allowed to use old sources older than 5 years? Anonymous, I am not really qualified enough to can talk about historical development studies. And of course, it will depend on the topic itself. How recent is the topic? So if you are going to be talking about the tombs that were created in the 1500 BC, obviously you will have to go backwards. But if you want to talk about cremation, which is suddenly something, it's latest history now, and you want to know about cremation, and cremation started like 3 years ago, then you will only get information that's about 3 years ago. I'm trying my best here because I'm not in the field of history. But I hope it makes sense. Vitu, thank you for the presentation. Are we supposed to include the limitations in the proposal? Yes, you have to, because you have to anticipate what can be the limitations of the study. And remember, the same limitations will be taken forth in the bigger study with the rest once you have finalized your study. The limitations can be of anything. It can be the limitations of the research methodology. It can be the limitations of the findings. So it depends on what limitations do you anticipate there. Anonymous, yes. In your experience, what are the most common mistakes that students make in their research proposals? This is a very easy one for me. The most common mistakes that students do, it's not having a correct title that aligns to the problem. The biggest mistake I have always seen is not having a researchable problem. Remember what I said, there are two types of problems. The one problem you can solve around the table. It doesn't need scientific inquiry. The one problem will be the big problem that needs you to go into a scientific inquiry to get evidence that supports the problem and answers the problem. So it is important to have a strong argument in your study. So if your proposal has got the weakest problem, then the study may not even be feasible. Thank you, Anonymous. Pelogazi, thank you very much for clarifying the research objectives for me. I was struggling especially with the action verbs. Those really helped me a lot. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad that the presentation is highlighting some of the things that are beneficial for your study as well. Thank you, Pelogas. Mpo, thank you very much. Prof, can you kindly elaborate on the research paradigms, objectives, subjectivism, and axiology? Mpo, as I indicated, there will be a fully fledged workshop on this. There will be a presentation that comes, so I don't want to contaminate that. I would like to say just attend that one so that you can start with it from the beginning and then you run with it to the end. Anonymous again, do we have a link? Do we have to link the research questions or objectives with theories adopted in the study? Anonymous, it depends on what your theories are going to be used for. Are you going to base your theories to use your theories to strengthen the problem that you have? Or are you going to use these theories to highlight the focus of the study? Or will you be using the theories to support the findings so that you know the theories will link with a lot of things in your study? So in this case, it will depend on the focus of your study, and I guess your supervisor may be able to advise as you advance into the study how the theories can really work better for your study. Anonymous, how do you determine number of population for your research study? Yes, Anonymous, this is very important. Remember, you are the person who goes out there and identify the problem. So once you have identified the problem, wherever you identify the problem, you go and then you seek the population that you will use in your study. So it's your responsibility to go and check how many people are there who are affected by this problem that I have. So if it's the master students at UNISA, it's my responsibility to go and check how many are these very master students who do not complete, so that I can also see the intensity of the problem. Hope it helps. Tawanda, is it allowed to list points in a problem statement as bullets? I would strongly discourage that, because remember, in your problem statement, we say you need to bring forth a very strong argument. And if you can remember those challenges of writing, where we said there are challenges with the writing paragraphs and placing the argument. So it's important that you've got your argument in the form of a paragraph, not in bullet forms, because sometimes you may find that the first bullet could have been the last bullet. But if you write them such that they flow, you know, there is that golden thread that tells one that here is how the problem was. Well, this is the problem. Remember the questions that we were asking. What is the problem? Where is it a problem? Whose problem is it? Why is it a problem? Can you hear as you go down with it like that? You are busy fitting in some literature or something that will assist you to actually bring forth an argument that tells somebody that this is really a problem. For instance, let me say to you, if I were to put a problem statement for the students who do not complete their masters, and then bullet one is just this, students do not complete masters. And then bullet 2 says student take more than 5 years. And then bullet number 7 says student may end up dropping out of the program. So can you see it's just bullets? They are not saying anything to anybody. But if you have to start talking in that and bringing forth an argument to say, according to the UNISA policy, all students who are registered for a master's program should actually attend the workshops. The process is such that the workshops are presented every week, and all students get to be invited through an email. However, the observation is that in the workshops, there will be about 10% of the students out of 99 of the students who are registered who only attend. And according to the UNISA statistics, out of these 99 students who have been registered, 75 of them will go beyond 4 years in their master's program. Anecdotal information says the students are saying it's because they do not get time to attend the workshop. And this they talk in relation to them being workers, so they are doing office hours. And yet the workshops are also done during working hours. Then you go on, you see, you are giving an argument, you are giving a story that will warrant an inquiry. You are explaining the facts. You are using the statistics. I hope it gives you an indication of why I'm saying I would discourage the use of the bullets. Tawan. Thank you. Anonymous says theoretical frameworks and research paradigms seem a little similar. Could you explain the difference between the two? As I indicated, I would not want to contaminate this side of the presentation. You will get a presentation full on the theoretical frameworks and how you fit them in your study. So I'd rather we leave them and just concentrate on how you write your proposal now. Thank you, Anonymous. Lungi, dear Prof, do you have a slide with connecting words that student can use? And how does the voice of the student come through in the proposal? I don't have that slide of the connecting words. And if you wish, we can have that arranged, that we have a presentation of such, so that you can see how you connect the words when you are writing an argument. But the voice of the student will come strongly in the problem statement. Remember, this is where we hear what you say you are going to investigate. You are the person who discovered the problem. You are the person who is worried about this problem, and you feel this problem needs to be attended. So that is where we hear your voice, in your problem statement. You are the only person who can give us the right information there. And that is why quite often you will find that in your problem statement, quite often it's not more like you will just get the problem statement from literature. Somewhere your voice comes and the literature will be used to support your problem as you identify it. Or you can actually use your voice to support the problem that is already there in literature, so that you can align what you have observed with what exists already. Pause is how long should the problem statement be? The problem statement should not, it could be like 350 to 500 words. It shouldn't be something very, very, very long. Otherwise, you end up losing focus. You just need to bring forth a strong argument and place it there. If you answer all those questions, what is the problem? Why is it a problem? When did it start to be a problem? Whose problem is this? Why do you want to investigate this? Then you are finished with your problem statement. Yes, thank you, Mpo. Vuyo, thanks for simplifying everything for us, Prof. Can you expand on your sample size in your actual research, or must you stick to the sample size specified in your research proposal? Again, Vuyo, your sample will depend on the choice of your data collection method. If you are going to be using statistics and you want to answer a specific question, you may need a bigger sample to do that. And like I mentioned, that if it's a qualitative study and you've got very limited people, your population is so small, your sample is such that you cannot use more than 5 people or 8 people, you will then make sure that you take all of them if they are all eligible to be in your study. So the sample size really will depend on your population and everybody that are there. And of course, for quantitative studies, the bigger the sample, the better. Okay. Yes, and the moderator is indicating to you that your PowerPoint slides for all the sessions are accessible on that link, so you will access that link. I don't see any other questions. I hope I've managed to respond to all of your questions, and for those who strongly feel they need to know about the theoretical frameworks and all, the session will definitely come. Okay, are there no more questions? If there are no more questions, I think I want to say to you all the best with your proposals, and do consult as much. You know, writing a proposal is not a very easy journey. You need to consult, and the first consultation you should do is with your books, your research books, so that you can understand the methodologies. Your literature search, that's another thing that you should consult, so that you can back up your problem. Your supervisor is there, readily available for all the questions that you would like to ask. So do not be afraid. They are definitely waiting for you to come and engage. All the best to all of you. And if there are no longer questions, I would like to say thank you very much. I enjoyed your questions, and I will also, you know, they also send me to go back and read, because I can now start thinking about the focuses of your studies. But all the best with your proposal, and I hope you will soon finalize them and get them through. Good evening.